her first feature, born out of a short. So there's all kinds of stuff to ask there. So I thought one way to begin here, and we're going to open it up and have conversation with those of us who are here. But if you don't mind, I thought I might just get some sort of Wikipedia factoids out of the way. Kind of questions people are interested in having answered in case they haven't already, sought out this information. So just rapid fire round. Okay, your first feature, what was the budget?
This budget was 250,000 Canadian.
250,000 Canadian, so like nothing. I think they can you hear that? Can you hear her? Yeah.
You can? Okay.
Yeah, I think her mic's on. Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, 250K Canadian.
Yeah.
And that was part of the telefilm round?
Yeah, it was part of the Talent to Watch program, which funds first features.
Okay. So good on you on getting into that round, of course. A lot of people in this country aspiring to be part of that. How long was the shoot?
It was 18 days.
18 days. Okay. Did you know the actors?
No. I kind of knew Michaela, who plays Lou, a little bit because she went to the same film school as I did, but we weren't friends.
Okay. So you auditioned for the role, for the leads and others?
Yes, it was like a lengthy audition process. And then which we did through Facebook and we did through Instagram. And then when we narrowed it down to like a few girls each to see in person, and then when we did in person, the auditions themselves were improvised, and I improvised with them for about 40 minutes. So it wasn't a very traditional audition, and because I wanted to see if people were willing to take risks and make choices early on. And then that was a year before we shot as well. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we'll talk more about the whole improv style of the filmmaking a little later, but that's a clue into how that all worked over 18 days. But sort of forecasting that conversation. So how much of this did you have plotted out as, what was the relationship between the treatment and the application and all of that initially, and what actually evolved? How big was the gap on the scale of whatever?
Well, when we applied for funding, I just had a treatment. I didn't have a script. And we got funding based off of treatment. But when we went to go shoot the film, we had a complete script that I spent a year writing. And what's on screen is from the script. It wasn't like, there's not a big departure.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And the male actors in the film, or were they auditioned? Did they audition as well?
Yes, everybody auditioned. And often we would bring in the leads, like Michaela and Karina, who play, because I cast them so far in advance. Yeah. I'd bring in the leads to read against the people auditioning for the male characters. And I did two things. First, it gave the actors coming in to audition for the male characters, the real person to read against, to read with in the scene. Again, improvised. And then it also gave Michaela and Karina the chance to build their characters during audition processes. So they would even say to me, oh, in that audition, I discovered something more about my character. And then they could also be a part of the casting process, which they were. I would be like, did you feel comfortable with this person? No, I didn't, but I like this guy because of this. And then that would factor into who we cast.
Good. Yeah. Well, it's very natural, amazingly natural in the telling. So you've been in quite a few festivals already, and lots of attention, and of course our festival really thought there was something special when we watched the film, those of us in the programming committee for sure. And so sitting here now, are you quite surprised by all this attention, or did you think, I got something really good here? And I know it's a crapshoot, but maybe other people are going to see how good that is.
Well, I think when you make a film that takes risks, you think either this could flop completely or it will resonate with people. And I think the only thing I cared about it was that I liked it and that it felt truthful to me and authentic to me. And so to see that approach yields good results doesn't surprise me, because I think if you approach any art with authenticity and you tell it from your heart, I think that you can't really go wrong. Did I expect to do as well as we did? No, I didn't expect. I try not to like.
Well, sure.
Yeah, I think if you're a filmmaker, you can't really go in being like, I'm going to play this festival and I'm going to get this award. I think that's a dangerous path. So you try to stay humble, but you also hope for the best. And you, first and foremost, my producer Kayla and I are just like, do we like it? That's the most important thing. Because we'd made shorts before and had expectations, and then they would fall short of that. And we're like, you know what? Enough making films for like accolades or festivals or other people. Like, let's just make films that we want to see out in the world and that we feel proud of. And that's going to be the biggest reward. And I have to say, even after all this, that's still the biggest reward.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I get that. Just a couple more short snappers, and then I got something juicier to ask you. So 18 days, it doesn't give you a lot of time, really, to make a lot of changes.
No.
So you shot chronologically?
No.
Okay. Do you want to say something about that?
Well, I think when you have a budget as tight as what we did, you can't, it would be nice to shoot chronologically, but you can't, just because locations and availability.
Day and night.
Yeah, all that stuff. So that's why we didn't shoot in order. But the reason why we were prepared is because we took months and months and months and months to prepare, to do rehearsals or like improv character building sessions. Like it was like, so much of the film was prep, was months and months and months of prep. Yeah. And Catherine, who shot the film, came in and shot the rehearsals. I would watch them back with her. We would tweak scenes based on that. Okay. That's why the script was the script when we shot, because I was tweaking it from the improv rehearsals. Okay. And I kind of realized there was a directing style that I was influenced by other filmmakers, and I was reading books on directing, and I was like, this is the way I want to approach this film, because this film lives and dies on authenticity. And if it doesn't feel authentic, if it feels staged, if the camera is like too still and doesn't feel immersive, it's not going to work. So we spent a lot of time in the prep period making sure that everything was ready, so when we do get to set and we don't have a lot of time, everybody just feels ready. And they did, and I think it worked for the most part.
So you do a lot of retakes, reshoots, or?
No reshoots.
No reshoots?
No.
Oh, that's pretty impressive.
Multiple, like some scenes we had to do a lot of takes of, and some scenes we didn't. I think actors you can be unpredictable. Some people can get nervous when the cameras are on them, and they weren't nervous in rehearsal, so that would change things. But I think because they had that time before, they felt more secure, and I think that helped.
Yeah. So you didn't see a big difference when the camera was on?
With certain actors, yeah. I think when the cameras came on, it felt they got too in their head, and that's the one of the responsibilities as a director, is to help an actor get out of that space. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of what I did, was like helping making sure that the actors knew I was there for them, every step of the way, because I mean, there's some difficult scenes for these actors who had no experience before, basically. And I'm like, remember when we were in rehearsal, or remember that day 3 months ago when we were doing this like character building session and Chantel left you at a party? Like, we made up this whole history. And then they'd be like, immediately they'd go back to that spot and be like, oh, right, yeah. And then they would just snap back into it. But like, that was my job, right? Is to like keep holding their hand in a way through it, and being like, I'm here for you. If you feel uncomfortable, let's stop. Let's talk about it. We'll work through it together. But I believe in you, basically. Like, and that was like a lot of this film.
Was that their first? Well, it must have been their first features anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Pretty amazing. I mean, Kayla's pretty amazing.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah. And just close, far, mid distance, doesn't matter. Yeah. She's pretty astonishing.
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff was forged in film school at Ryerson. But I guess I read at some point you said that, you realized you don't want to just be studying film, you want to be making film, right? There was that.
Well, we made a lot of films in Ryerson.
So you were the production stream.
Yes. Yeah. I did film studies before, and then I went into, at different schools, and then I went into production. But
yeah. I guess, as a film studies scholar who never made films, I'm always curious about whether filmmakers who've gone to film school think it's a good idea to recommend going to film school or not go. It's kind of a classic question.
Yeah.
But I mean, you did, and you're doing well, so there's a...
It was valuable for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's valuable for everybody, but I hadn't really touched a camera too much before I went to film school.
Yeah.
I did study it theoretically as well, and I'm glad I did. But yeah, it was very formative, a lot of formative years there for me, and a place to make mistakes and make like garbage and make make sure that
affordably manageable.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
Well, good on Ryerson, I'd say.
Yeah.
So here's my first kind of question that I'm thinking about watching this film for the second time.
Yeah.
So this story about these girls and this motel and this, where was it shot, by the way?
It was shot.
Could be anywhere, but
could be anywhere, and that was purposeful. But it was shot in southern Ontario, so like Hamilton and London, Ontario, primarily places that were sort of like I was very striving for places that felt left behind by globalization. So places that used to have industry and that have vanished, but there's people still living there, and a lot of transient people that don't stay for long.
Right.
And that's why I picked those places.
Yeah. I lived in London for 6 years and went to Western. I can tell you it was nothing like that.
Right. There's aspects of...
Yeah, I know. I'm just
not.
But that's why that could be anywhere.
Could be anywhere.
The London I lived in was pretty middle class and established and conservative, and London Life Insurance and Western, and that was London, Ontario. So what I was wondering is, where did this all come to you? Why this subject? Why? I understand the transient, that sort of the instability of the world that you're covering, but it's very gendered. Obviously, there's all that going on. And you're looking at a period in young people's lives where so much is uncertain and desperate, hopeful, all of that going on. Where did that come from in you to look at that?
Yeah.
I guess it's more of a personal question about you didn't live that life. You haven't lived that life. So, as a filmmaker, creator, what about that was close to you or interested?
Yeah, well, I made a short in my last year of film school, also called Firecrackers. And it was about two girls who want to leave their small town. They don't. In that short, they actually don't. It's just like 15 minutes, so you can't dive deep into a lot of themes. But after I graduated, I made some other films and like really developed my directorial voice. And I felt like I wanted to, when the Town to Watch deadline was coming up, my producer's like, what if we expanded Firecrackers into a feature? And I thought, you know what, for me, what this film is really about is about freedom. It's about looking at like both, especially female freedom, but also male and female freedom within a patriarchal world. Like to me, that was like this, I knew that's a theme I wanted to explore. And then I said, how do I explore that huge theme, which means a lot to me because I care about, like I'm a feminist. I feel like I've been my whole life, and I care so much about, women who want to seek power but get punished for it. And it was the 2016 presidential election. I was seeing that happen even on that grand scale, right? Like there was so much value in this man who put down other women and a woman who was trying to break through glass ceiling and was punished. So on like a very personal level, I felt that my whole life. The girls that I grew up with were like that, and they were always punished for speaking their mind, speaking out against misogyny. And I often thought about women wrestle with this sort of, I shouldn't speak for all women, but I think a lot of women wrestle with this thing of being complacent and learning how to not be, when do I speak out and when do I be complacent? And I think with Chantel, especially that character, she's more complacent at the beginning and then learns that will only keep her trapped there. And then Lou is the opposite. Like their arcs to me, I wanted to crisscross their arcs so that Lou is somebody who fights against everything and pays dearly for it. And then at the end is worn down by it and it becomes submissive, submits to it all, submits to her fate. And I thought that's these are themes that I want to see more explored more on film, and I want to see female characters who are unapologetic because men have been able to be that in film and storytelling for so long, and nobody really is upset with that. So I'm like, no, women, we need to see more stories like that. But I also thought I'm not here to make men the enemy. I also think I explore in this film the way men are punished for being vulnerable, both the little boy and Johnny. And how I think there's also a performative aspect to masculinity in which keeps you trapped as well. And so I was thinking about these big themes that were really important to me, and that just like sort of were informed by my experience as a woman, but also like I grew up in a town that felt very restrictive in its thinking. It wasn't a small town, so that's different. It's not autobiographical, but like every single moment, every single character either comes from a piece of myself or somebody that I've known. I'm not reaching for, I try not to be too derivative with it and base it off things that weren't real to me. Mm-hmm. So it was a way, I was looking at films like Thelma and Louise, which is very similar in the sense of like women trying to escape a patriarchal landscape. And in that film, the only way they achieve freedom is by driving off a cliff. Mm-hmm. And to me, like the way you wrap that film in a package, and like when they're driving off the cliff, like some producer probably said, we got to like turn up this happy song now because it's dark.
Sure.
But here it's almost like the prelude to that. It's almost like trying to me, this feels like the prelude to Thelma and Louise's story.
I agree.
So that's sort of what I was thinking about.
And they're younger, of course.
Yes.
But yeah, you cannot help but see the ending without invoking that film, for sure. It is far more ambiguous an ending than Thelma and Louise, because they're just going off into a sunset and all the cliche that comes with that, and the unknown, and everything you've just experienced cannot suddenly transform this journey into anything but a very ambiguous one.
It's ambiguous, and I think also slightly, some people choose to see it in a very hopeful way. And I think that this film needed that after going through such a dark road. You need to at least end this in a way that could be hopeful. Yeah,
I agree. I think that's, in a way, when you're watching it, typical of a film that is that dark and kind of, it keeps looping back. They keep coming back to the same place. Yeah. You know, Thelma and Louise begins with the journey. That's the big thing here. They can't get to the journey. It's round and round and round. So you can't help but ask, how the hell are they going to get out of this?
Yes.
I think it's a nice touch at the end, leaving it hopeful, but not impossibly hopeful, or fictionally or romantically hopeful. So that was a really nice touch. So the reaction to the film has, I think, really respected everything you're talking about. Must be very, very validating for you to have that, and not just women audiences, I should think. I think everybody, as you say, the character of Johnny especially is really well played. He reminds me a lot of Going Down the Road. I don't know if that was part of your repertoire as a film student.
It was, I really liked that film.
That's very much in this film as well.
Yeah, I really like that film. It's a gem of Canadian cinema history. But I thought a lot about that, and I think a lot about the men that have been in my life in either like in many different ways, and I just kept seeing this over and over again. This sort of like failure to live up to expectations, and that being like a sickness almost, and like something that's impossible to achieve. And somebody actually said early on, like a young audience. We did a test screening. Some young man said, "You portray men as weak," and I thought that was interesting, because I thought that seeing a man who's vulnerable as weak is the very issue that I'm trying to address, and I really want that to be undone.
And you said that?
Well, I didn't actually. He just wrote it, and I read it later, and I was like, well.
Right.
Yeah, you have some learning to do, maybe. Yeah.
Have you been, in fact, in audiences or in non-written ways, in public ways, been challenged in creepy ways, or asked questions that showed people didn't get it, or something?
Oh yeah, quite a lot. And even like in early test screenings with even sometimes funders, the comment that bothered me the most, I think, was from men being like, I have daughters and I don't want them to see this film. Oh God. And I thought that was very, people even that I kind of knew, people who I worked for would say that. And I felt almost betrayed by that, because I thought, then you're kind of, that shows me the way you see women in the world. And it bothered me. And that's, again, a reason why I made this, is to stop, to break down that myth of good girl and bad girl, or something like, oh, these girls are so bad. And it's like, I just think, like, again, men have been in films and have done similar things, and nobody's like losing sleep over it. So I that was unfortunate. That made me sad to hear that.
Well, here you are, amazing confidence. It's fabulous. Where do you think you get your chutzpah from?
I don't know. People say that, and I'm just like, I don't really. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I just think you have to
Family?
Probably. I think having a strong Iranian father who's like very like, if you want something, you do it. Don't complain. Just do it. And that probably comes from that. And also a single mom who's just very hardworking. But I think also if you have something you want to say in the world and you believe it wholeheartedly, like I knew when I was writing this, I'm like, I better believe what I'm saying, because it won't. If you don't believe it, like people will be able to see that on screen. They'll be able to see that in you. So you better be able to stand behind this 150%. So. Yeah,
I think you keep coming back to that. It's interesting. I look at a lot of grant applications in the province, and one assumes that every submission has somebody who really believes. Yeah. And some are more interesting than others, and but I guess that's just an assumption one has. But the more you speak about it, the more important it seems to be, or it emerges as something that maybe distinguishes some filmmakers from others who are doing. I'm not casting any aspersions, but everybody's trying to get stuff done. Doesn't necessarily mean everybody has to believe in the sense you're talking about this as a kind of mission, as opposed to doing a creative project. Where you want to, you do want to create something. You're talking about something almost at a different level of belief, like drive. What you wanted to say here. Yes. As opposed to just telling another story about something interesting, let's say.
I think, I don't know how I feel like I have to approach a lot of things like that. Yeah.
So everybody's very reverential here. I'm going to open it up and see if anybody has any questions. And good. We got a mic.
You've kind of half answered my question by saying that you were trying to portray an archetype of the main character and how she finally submits. Yeah. But I couldn't kind of get why, if she was going through a real submission and a real, okay, finally, I can't handle anymore, she approached him with sex. I'm kind of still trying to get my head around that. I know he was trying to be vulnerable. I got that. Yeah. But to be honest, I didn't get why they had sex. To be honest.
Yeah, I think that's a hard scene for a lot of people.
Was that hard? I mean, it didn't rub me the wrong way. I was just trying to understand
the motivation
intellectually. You know what I mean?
I think I don't necessarily see Lou as like a good character. Like I wasn't writing her and being like she's like the hero. I think that for somebody who's had so much power taken away from her over and over and over and over again, I think she saw a situation in which she tried to reclaim her power, and he is the adult in that situation, but wants it too, but also knows it's wrong. But she's underage and he is an adult, and I think it's not an easy answer. Like I wasn't writing it to be like somebody is right here and somebody is wrong. But I think that she's doing it because she feels like she just came outside. She just was coming from outside, and like her friend had a gun in her mouth. Like she's just traumatized by it. Everything she's doing to help her friend and her get to freedom is not working. All of her power is taken away. And I think in this like very impulsive moment, tries to get her power back and doesn't work. But I think that sex is often a power thing, like in general. Like I think like in film, to me, like it's not, sex is a lot of times about power in the end. And it can be for bad reasons too. And I was sort of showing like, I wasn't trying to like show a specific answer about why she did this or why he was into letting that happen, even as a full-grown man. But I think that it's about power at the end of the day and her trying to reclaim her power. But I don't think that she's right in that situation. I don't think he's right in that situation.
That's right. But did you do it then to show that she was, because she had, I was starting to really respect her intellect. I was starting to think, this girl actually is quite right a lot of the times.
Well, that's interesting you think that, because I find her kind of, impulsive and doesn't think through things. Like she's smashing a guy's car, you know what I mean?
But
like,
she had, she had a kind of good reason.
Yeah, she did. She did. Yeah, exactly. It's
she probably didn't do the legal thing, but she kind of did the thing we'd all probably like to do.
Yeah, exactly. She's not. I think it's different for everybody, because a lot of people are like, don't end up liking her as a character, and that's fine. I think she's young and doesn't know the decisions she's making. She's letting this sort of idea of being like, I feel powerless. And like,
so then I can get power back if I, great.
Yeah, and also it's a mirror.
Yeah, that's a great,
And it's a mirror of the earlier scene in the film where she's intimate with this guy Eric in a car, and he throws her out, like basically out of his car, and blames her for his like inability to perform, and like that's all taken from like a few like real life instances too, like from people I've talked to. But again, feeling like I'm not powerless. It was like a mirror of that situation. Like I'm powerless in this situation. I'm being thrown across a car. I'm being kicked out in the middle of nowhere and left behind, and being blamed for this person's inability to perform because he feels emasculated, and he's trying to get power back by insulting me. And then on the flip side, at the end, her trying to get she has ingrained misogyny, Lou. She's learned it. Her mom's learned it. She starts to perform sort of the misogynistic attitudes that she's learned her whole life through these men, and she puts it back out in the world, which is wrong. But I think that she's learned it through examples, and I think the beginning of the film is an example of one of the many situations she's had in her life where her powers, she's been told to put up and shut up.
There's a very short point of view shot earlier where she's watching him. She kind of pulls and sees him doing push-ups. So I thought that was a really nice touch, because it complicates the whole reality of this male presence in her house. She's still kind of, as you say, kind of unconscious of desire, all of that. He's in the house, she's watching the male body perform. So I thought that was a really nice kind of link to what does happen.
Yes.
It just sort of a nuance kind of underscoring of this presence of this male physical, body in the house. That ultimately, she has her way with. But anyway,
yeah. And I think, at that age, it's like there's a lot of confusion.
Yeah, and just looking at it, there it is, just working out, and
Yeah.
Other questions, comments, and there's at the back.
You mentioned the 2016 election and how kind of the context of that had an influence on you. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if the Me Too movement and I guess the societal conversations we've been having about consent had any influence on you.
Yeah, well, the Me Too movement was after I made this film. Like it began afterwards. So it didn't influence my writing because it happened later. But I did think about sexual assault has always been a part of mine and so many other women's lives that I've been close to. And to me, it's a symptom. Like, I didn't want this film to just be about sexual assault, but it's obviously, like, I wanted to look at the reverberations of an act like that and how they are linked to not even just the assault itself, because people like to focus on the assault or what happened to Chantal or something like that. And I'm like, as women, like, I don't think we need to know what happened, but the reverberations after an act like that, or like all the other ways of thinking that are connected to that. Like, it's not an isolated thing. I think like patriarchal way of thinking, misogyny is so intertwined into many facets of our lives. So like that's the way I was thinking about issues surrounding sexual assault going into the film. Is that sort of what or is there something more specific? Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, the Women's Film Festival began like decades before Me Too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else? A comment or question? Oh, here's a guy in the front row who I happen to live with has a question right here. And then we'll come back to you.
One of the most striking things visually about your film was the in-your-face proximity. Did you experiment with longer distance shots and then decide that was the way to go, or did it just happen?
We did, so Catherine Lutz shot this film, and we knew that it had to be immersive. We just always knew that from the start, but we did try, just for fun, to be like, let's shoot some wide shots. And they just felt so wrong. Like, we would do it, we always like to try and do the opposite, just to make sure that our instincts were right. And I tried to do that even with the actors. I'm like, how about you just do the exact opposite in this scene and see how it feels? And then they almost immediately knew how right their initial instinct was. And that was the same thing with the filming. We did like in the beach stuff at the beginning of the film, there's like 6 actors there. And we probably have footage somewhere of a wide, and it just looks awful. Like, it just feels so wrong. It feels like a play. We knew that our instincts were right. And I think that I wouldn't shoot every film like that. I think the energy of this film calls for that, and I think like the subject matter calls for that. So that's why we kind of stuck to that mobile camera, that close-up stuff.
This is a real feeling of claustrophobia.
That too.
They can't escape, and you can't escape from them.
Exactly. Yeah. That's actually a very apt observation, I think.
He's very smart. One question.
And have good taste in women.
I was curious about the relationship between 2 scenes, the one where John and Chantal are interacting with the BB gun, and then the one in which they're interacting with the real firearm.
Yes.
And what the intention was between the kind of mirrored images there.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I feel like I've never been asked that question, but it was very intentional. I think that Johnny is a person who's starting for the very first time in his life to become self-aware. But he still has sort of these old behaviors sort of left over from a life that you can tell was connected to like those dudes you meet at the end. And I think in the BB gun scene, there's a lot sort of subtext there. I think Chantal is a person who likes to use her sexuality to gain power. And she defaults to that even with Johnny. And I think Johnny, there were so many notes I gave the actors there, like individually, that I didn't tell each of them. But with the character of Johnny, I think he's trying to show that he can befriend them. Like, I can be like you guys as friends. Like, he wants to be accepted. He's doing that to be accepted by Lou. Doesn't really care about Chantal in that scene. I said, like, you want Lou, maybe even in a very immature way, to be jealous, which she is. And like, I think Chantal feels uneasy after what's just happened to her, and this guy's paying, and she's mad at Lou as well. And so there's like this triangle between them, right? Like, of like, she just had this argument with Lou, and Lou's like, let's just go, like, let's forget this guy. But she's like, no, like, I want to learn the BB gun too. And Lou's like, why? This makes no sense. But everybody's playing games with each other. And later, because I think Chantal picks him specifically. So the only reason I'm going to play this game, but the only reason I'm going to do it is because I'm going to pick the only guy that I trust, because he showed me how to use a gun earlier, and I felt safe with him. And I think that even when you can see him, at the end, he absolutely doesn't want to participate, but crumbles under the pressure of performing that masculinity for these guys. She picks him because she trusts him. And so they're both like, again, they're kind of both performing this, like, they're both performing in a way, and they're trying to live up to something that they can't, and it's all out of fear. And I think they're both engaged in this moment where there's this trust between them, but they're also really scared. So, I think that that's sort of what I saw as the pairing. Like, the only way, I knew when I was writing that, I'm like, the only way this is going to happen is if Chantal picks the person who she trusts. Because she's smart. Like, she's not going to just play this game. At that point, she's super desperate, and she wants to just leave no matter what, and she'll do anything. But at the same time, she's like, the only way the audience is going to believe that she would actually probably do this is if she picks the person who showed her how to use a gun and felt safe with. So that's why. Did that answer? Okay.
I just have an observation that I saw while I was watching the film. Lou, at some point, judges her mother because of the relationship with Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
I'm closer in age to him than you are. And it's almost, and I don't know if you meant this, but it's almost like that's one of the reasons why she may have had sex with him and initiated it.
Maybe, yes. Yeah.
Look, I'm more your type than Mom is.
Yes.
The other thing, the significance of money. She knew how to save, she knew what she wanted, but you gave the boys the vehicles,
Yeah.
the girls had no means of getting out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was intentional.
Yes.
Trucks were important in truck culture.
Yeah.
And for someone of her age, just finishing high school or just finished high school, from my generation, girls would hook up with men, inappropriate, have babies to get away from their home.
Yeah.
She saved. She knew she wasn't going to get trapped in that cycle and save money. And then look what happens, because of her actions. And I agree with you. The smashing of the car. If your guy did it, so
I know, yeah.
it's a woman beating up a car, a young woman at that, and then the way she has to pay back everything that she saved up, which meant so much to her. That was her freedom being thrown away in order to, for her mom to make good so she doesn't get a record of some sort.
Exactly, and I think also those girls could literally have just said, let's just go tell everybody that Kyle sexually assaulted you, but they know nobody will believe them. So they don't even bother. There's not even a scene I decided to write because they know that already. And I think that Leanne, the mom, knows something happened after. You can tell in that scene where she's like, there's a lot of bad people in this world, sweetheart, you better get used to it. I think that she somehow found out something bad happened. And instead of saying, I'm here for you, let's figure this out, she says, this is just the way it is, because she's gone through probably a bunch of things. And my mom did the same thing, married somebody she wasn't in love with, and to get out of her house.
My mom's Lebanese, so when you said Iranian, I knew from your name,
right?
Some Arabic.
Yeah, and yeah, but you're right. All your observations were a part of the motivations that I gave to the actors.
And that Lou's mom didn't want Chantel around.
No.
For two reasons. She didn't want her daughter to become Chantel or be like Chantel, and I think also she knew Johnny was, liking Chantel at some point.
Yeah, and I think also with certain type of age in that in that where she is, she feels like there's a scarcity complex. Men are only going to, I'm not valuable anymore. Right. So I don't want the threat of and I'm just thinking to me that's just such a sad world to live in, but I get it too, I understand it, and I feel bad, Leanne I think is off, she does a lot of awful things to her daughter, but I always try to approach it from sympathy and being empathetic.
Well, again, very briefly, but speaks volumes, the shot of Lou watching her mother clean the floors at night in the diner or wherever it is. That's all you need. That's lovely. Just says so much about, it gives us sympathy for the mom, and it complicates Lou's own position in the world. All of that in that shot.
Yeah, because I think she still loves her mom no matter what.
And she sees her mom's living a life she doesn't want. Why would you?
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other comments and questions?
I thought it was really interesting that after they smashed up this car and, they're drinking and smoking, they go and ride around in a parking lot in shopping carts. Was that to kind of illustrate that though they're, kind of trying to live this life maybe beyond their age, they're still, young girls at heart, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also that was one of the first times in the film where they felt truly free and empowered by their actions, rather than being, I think they were exhilarated that they got back at this asshole. And
interesting that it showcased their youthfulness by also reminding the audience of just how young they are.
Yes. Yeah.
If you took that scene of them pushing each other around in the shopping cart out of context, you never imagine what these characters are capable of.
Yeah. And I think that's like so true of like the way I grew up with teenage girls. Like there was that duality. Like you're playful and you're mature and you want to like drink and like what else do you do in a town like that, like at night, right? So, but also there's a duality of like there's pain. You're vulnerable. You can be vindictive against people who have treated you wrong. Like you're forming your identity. So. Yeah, I think you're totally right. That was for that, and it's also for me was really important in that part of the film to show that there's a feeling of absolute freedom before the fall starts. And in the short film, it almost ended on that freedom and just ended there, even though there was like we don't know if we're going to get out, but we feel free right now. And there was that pushing the shopping cart, which becomes. I mean, like that's an image you see a lot now, but it was kind of a throwback also to my short where that was a scene, and I shot that in 2012. So I was kind of like, it was just a shout out to like the original short as well.
Good.
Yeah.
So we're all going to go across the road to Sobeys now and.
Good. Yeah. Go for it.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I've just got a quick question. I don't mean to monopolize, but one of the things I found was lots of tension in the film. Like,
Yeah.
You never knew what was going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
How did you create that? Let's come some secrets to that.
I think one of the key things creating tension is not giving everything away, like through the characters and dialogue, like having them say things they don't mean, not telling the audience how they feel all the time. Like I think on just a very fundamental level in the script stage, like it's like, like I would like write a draft and be like, she's saying too much here, and the other thing, like, and having characters. Yeah, come into a scene and they are feeling something, but they're saying something different. Like an example is like I said with Lou and her mom, or even Chantel and Lou when like they come into a scene and like a bunch of stuff has happened and you feel that right away because they're hesitant to really give the truth. So I think that always creates tension. I think like one of the first scenes that ever came to me in my mind was that rifle scene at the end. But you have to build it up slowly, and that's why that scene's so long. It's like I think it's the longest scene in the film, and I think that helps to create tension. Is like you feel like, okay, maybe there's like a comfort or like, there's a playfulness, and then just like start dropping in hints that start to feel like something's turning, and I feel uneasy. And like you just need to like slowly drop in hints, and then by the time you get to that moment where it's earned, there is that tension. So I think it all comes down to the script, really, like of thinking about the way you create tension between characters, and it's basically not giving away too much right away. Yeah.
Also, you're dealing with you're echoing, or there are notes of the genre you're working in, whether it's Thelma and Louise or going down the road, wherever, where there's so much of anticipation of violence. So that's already in your script. That's already in the shot,
Yeah.
So everyone has that expectation, and then is it going to be explosive or not?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I think we are all very lucky to have Jasmin here talk to us and to showcase the film for us. We expect you to come back with lots of really good stuff in the future. Film Festival warmly embraces you and your future. Just tell us what you're on to next, if you can share.
I don't have any concrete like films going next, but I'm starting to develop a limited TV series and a film, but they're in the early stages. And
good.
Also trying to see what scripts also have been sent to me and thinking about maybe instead of writing my own thing, directing somebody else's work and seeing what that feels like. Yeah. So there's a few different things going, but they're all in the early stages.
So maybe you'll come back to the festival soon and talk to us about writing for television, all the stuff that we cover over 5.5, 6 days during the festival itself. You really got to come. It's a great party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Please join me in welcoming Jasmin and thanking her for this great film.
Thank you.